Well, welcome back to this, our final session in our series that started last year when we looked at the treasure principle. And then earlier this month, we looked at the first few of the gold mine principles that I've had the privilege to introduce or reintroduce to you that focused on the other two areas that leadership wanted us to be looking at, and that we looked at treasure, then we looked at talent, and now we've been looking at time. And in the last session, we talked about goals and goal setting as an expression of purpose and creativity, as a way to focus and use our time. In this session, we want to get a little more specific about time and tie in some faith concepts. Usually that's a separate principle for me, but we're working within the 4-week format, that 4 presentation format that we thought would work best. So bear with me, I'm going to incorporate those two concepts for you, with you, as we look at time and faith in this particular session. As I've said in all the sessions, this is only to tantalize you, it's only to give you a taste of what is available to learn and study in these areas. Later in the year, be watching for the announcements when we will have seminars on purpose and on time management. I've taught both of them for many, many years. My book is available, Life is a Gold Mine, Can You Dig It? It digs more deeply into these gold mine principles, and I use the mining theme and have golden nuggets that I've discovered in Proverbs that tie to each one of these topics. So that book is available to you. Also my Unlocking series, Unlocking the Power of Purpose, Unlocking the Power of Creativity, Unlocking the Power of Productivity, and Unlocking the Power of You, where we get comfortable with our personality and realize this is who God made us to be. He may want to knock off the rough edges, but still He's going to keep us basically the same as who He created us to be. My website is purposequest.com. I invite you to go there and poke around and see what you can find that can help you in any of the areas that we've been talking about or we'll talk about in this session. And I also encourage you to find examples, either historic or living examples, of people who have faith and know how to manage their time. And I was blessed with a mother who not only did spring cleaning every year, she started on the same day every year. That's how organized she was, unless it was a Sunday. And if it was a Sunday, she waited till the next day. She was structured. She was organized. That's interesting. My sister, same gene pool, tends to be a little more relational and a little less organized. I bought into the organization that she provided the model for, so I have more of a tendency to do that. But at the same time, I think I've taken it a little further, and many of you know I've written books. I'm always hesitant to say how many, but at this count it's 28 and going up, because I understood the purpose, creativity, learned how to set goals, and then applied all that to my time. And we'll talk, I'll share with you some of the tips that I would have for you, but it's all undergirded with faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So this isn't just, I'm not trying to, Jesus warned leaders, don't just put burdens on people and don't lift a finger to help them carry those burdens. I want to help you if you're engaging purpose and creativity and goal setting and want to utilize your time. I want to give you some things that will help you because it really is a joy. It's not a burden. It's a lot of fun, and it is a joy. So an introduction to time management. I always take, any time I teach this in a faith situation, I go to Joshua 10. And it's a story of Joshua who was engaging the enemies of Israel. And we're picking it up in mid-story, but it says, after an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, so Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road going up to Beth Horon and cut them down all the way to Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel on the road down from Beth Horon to Azekah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them, and more of them died from the hail than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. Now on the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. What are the lessons that we can take out of this very unusual story where time management is concerned? Number one, you will have busy seasons of your life. There are going to be times when the children or job or ministry is going to crowd in on you, and you're going to have a lot of things you want to do, but you're going to have a lot of things that you have to do. What do you do in those circumstances? Well, don't fear. Don't panic, but we're going to look at what else you can do. Point number two, you can have faith for time, just like you do for healing or provision or ministry opportunities or anything else. In the story, Joshua had faith that God had given him something to do, and God was going to help him do it in the time that he had allotted to him. Now, the sun stopped. It said there's never been a day like that before or since. So I'm not saying you can have faith and pray that the sun would stop, but I am saying you can have faith that God will empower you to do more in the time that you have than you thought was ever possible. Again, we're going back to the fear theme, because part of why we don't engage what it is that we want to do is we are afraid we don't have time to do it well. We are afraid we can't utilize the moments that are available to us. Therefore, we say, I've got to have more time, so I'll write when I have 6 weeks to sit down and write. You don't want 6 weeks in your life where you're not doing anything else. That means you've broken your leg, or you're recovering from surgery, or you've been laid off, and you're at home depressed. And I read a great quote a few years ago that said, if you aren't creative when you don't have time, you won't be creative when you do have time. So if you aren't creative when you think you don't have time and take those 15 or 20 minutes, you won't be creative when you have the spring break or the Christmas break. Oh, I'm so far behind, and I want to spend time with my family. Therefore, I'll start next month. And we're always starting next month because of unreasonable expectations where time is concerned. Point number 3, you have all the time there is. I didn't say all the time you want, all the time there is. You have 24 hours a day. You have as much time as Bill Gates. You have as much time as Pastor Rock. You have as much time as A.W. Tozer had, as John Wesley had. You have 24 hours a day. What will you do with those 24 hours? When you say, I need more time, you've got all there is. It's how we're apportioning the time that we have that will make the big difference. And that's point number 4. Not only do you have all the time there is, you have all the time you need. That very often our expectations of how long it's going to take to do something are unreasonable, and that's why we don't start it. And so you have all the time there is, and you have all the time you need. Now let's look at another verse, very interesting verse where time management is concerned, and that's found in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. It says, "But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day." Very spiritual sounding. It's, the day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day. Well, let's do the math. I did the math one day. So I said if 24 hours is 1,000 years, what would 1 hour be? And 1 hour would be the equivalent of 46, a little over 46 years. So I said, okay, if that's an hour, what would a minute be in this construct? And so a minute would be about 9 months. So what? But if the Lord tells you He'll be there in just a minute, you understand that His concept of a minute is not the same as ours. Ladies, if you've had children, you've just been pregnant for a minute. Yeah, right. You've been pregnant for 9 months. My point is that God looks at time a little differently than we do. But it also says that 1,000 years is like a day. And what you thought could take you 9 months, when you apply faith, set the goal, and base it on your creativity and purpose, what you thought was going to take a long time, you can get done like that. See, I'm working on a lot of book projects now because I've started a publishing company. And my fear is I don't have time to get into this. I'm so far behind. And when I get into it, I start to move through. And I thought that didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. I'm doing more than I thought I could do because God is helping me do it. I'm having faith for time. There are days when I've been real busy and I say, God, stop the sun. Now, I'm meaning, God, help me with the time that I have available. I'm going to take it every hour at a time. I'm going to do what I can do. I've got my to-do list right in front of me. I'm going to do what I can. If I can't, it's written. I can do it another day. I'm going to trust the Lord. But every day becomes an opportunity to use those 24 hours that everybody in the world has, to use them, to maximize them to the best of my ability as God will help me. Now, there's a lot more I could share about time management. I mentioned to you a list. I never approach a day I write every day. I never approach a day without a list. I am always consulting it. I am putting it in some order that I believe can work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. When I'm in the car, I'm always listening to books, or I'm using that as my phone time when I'm commuting into the north side or someplace else. And if I don't get to it, or if I forget, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It is written down someplace. So I always have you see me in church, I always have my notebook with me. Because I never know when somebody's going to approach me. Can we meet? Or I have an idea, or I think of something, I've been meaning to get to that, and it keeps going in my brain and going out of my brain. So once I write it down, it's so fascinating, it never comes back in my brain. I never think about it again once I write it down. So if you're tormented with a project or a concept or something to do, write it down. Now don't write it down someplace on a sticky and you leave. Good, I wrote it down and now I can walk away from it. No, you want to take that with you. Because you never know when God's going to give you an assignment. You say, well, how do I know it's the Lord? Well, I'm going to assume it is. We talked about that in the last session. If it pops in my mind, by faith, I'm going to assume, whether it's to write a Bible commentary or call my aunt, I'm going to assume that God put it there, and I'm going to give it a reasonable chance to find expression in my life because I have faith for time. But faith, something that's our world. We should be the most full of faith, radical people on the face of the earth. We don't have to have the reasons to do something. We just have to obey. We don't have to know how we're going to do it. We just have to obey. I mentioned in one of the earlier sessions, if you felt impressed that you're to go on a missions trip in a year and you're saying you can't go because you don't have the money today, that's unfaith. You are saying in the next year, there is no way that God can get me the money to do what I believe I'm supposed to do. That's unbelief. You're saying, this is my world, this is my job, and that's the only way God can provide, and I don't see it, and if I don't see it, I'm not going to do it because I want to be responsible. And it sounds cool, but it's unfaith. It's unbelief. And very often, unbelief isn't, I'm seeing more and more, the opposite of faith. Fear is the opposite of faith. The fear is what keeps it. What if it's wrong? What if I look like a fool? What if people laugh? What if I say I'm going to go and I really don't get the money? In my experience, and I've taken a lot of people to Africa, I have never had anybody say God wanted them to go and them not come up with the money. It's inconceivable. It is impossible for God to direct you and not to supply you. It cannot happen. If He wants you to go, you'll go. If He wants you to publish, you'll publish. If He wants you to start a company, He'll help you do it. He'll test you. He may kill you along the way, but he will stand with you. Hebrews 11:6, without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. What can we learn from that simple verse? Number one, faith is the action that most pleases God. Not your giving, not your singing. It's faith, the motivation for what you do while you do. If without faith you displease God, then with faith you please Him. You can bring pleasure to God by trusting Him. Not climbing high mountains, trusting Him. Number three, God rewards those who have faith. There is a reward. We're back to the prize of goal setting that we talked about in the last session. And number four, faith cannot be casual or passive, but involves earnestly seeking, earnestly acting. Again, my books are written one page at a time, one day at a time. They are not part of the heavenly Jerusalem. They do not descend from on high. I have to work at it. God helps me, I work. Biblical overview. Romans 14:23 says, but whoever has doubts is condemned if they eat, because their eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin. Now, I looked up the Greek word for everything there, because you can't be expected to do that. You're ignorant, and you don't know the biblical languages. So I looked up the word for everything there, and the word for everything there means everything. Yeah. Because I'm ignorant of the languages too. It's everything. Everything that is not of faith is sin. Purpose, creativity, goal setting, time management, all of it is undergirded in faith. That's our oxygen. That is the spiritual air that we breathe. Others have said it is the currency that we spend to make transactions with God. That's how He deals with us. What He expects from us. Do you have faith? Now in James 2:17, the famous verse, well-known verse, in the same way, faith by itself, and if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Faith without action is useless. It is dead. So what can we learn from these verses? Well, you can only find purpose, be creative, set goals, and manage time if you exercise faith in the process. I used to go to these time management seminars and walk out feeling worse than when I came in. I got to have a bigger notebook and write down more stuff and put this over here and put this over there. What was the missing piece? The missing piece was always faith. So now I approach every day with faith. Yeah, I do a to-do list, but it's not rigid. This is what I hope, if everything goes well. But I see in part. So we'll see how the day goes. But if it goes well, God, and you help me, these are the things I'd like to do. And I find if I don't have the list, then I kind of fritter away the time. So number two, faith is relaxing and allowing God to manage what you cannot. So I try to manage those things I can. Those that I can't, that are beyond my control, I live with. Okay, I didn't get to it today. I didn't get to it this week. I didn't get to it this month. I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to keep transferring it. I'm going to keep it before me and let it bake a little bit more. Let the dough rise. It'll get ready. I thought I was ready. I thought the time was ready. It's not, but that's okay. But there are other things I thought, no way. But when I had faith, I pressed through and I saw them happen. So faith is not passive. It is learning to trust God for what only He can do while you do what it is that only you can do. You write. He inspires. But if you are waiting for Him to inspire and you don't sit down, or you haven't sat down and you expect Him to keep doing it, you're not doing the part that you can do. Every Sunday night when I sit down for the last 16 years to write a Monday memo, there are many Sundays I don't know what I'm going to write, but I show up in faith and I put my fingers to the keys, and the first thing that comes to my mind, it has to be the Lord. I've asked Him for wisdom. He will not abandon me. There's no doubt. And I produce. Now, I've produced 790 Monday memos. If you have a better way, tell me how to do it. But that's what's worked for me. God, I'm going to show up. Now, during the weeks, very often I'm thinking, but that's what I do. And He has never failed me. And finally, faith is a way of life, not an event. See, very often I want it to be an event. Whew, glad that's over with. I don't have to trust the Lord anymore, Whoa. Did that Africa trip, but thank goodness that's over. Now I can get back to normal. No, the normal is faith. And so some exercises just for you to consider as we close, and I would consider any questions that you have from our group here. Just read and study Hebrews 11. See how faith and vision go hand in hand. When God shows you something and you have faith, you see it as already done. I see my books as written before I start writing. I think about how I'm going to sign them as people buy them or as I give them away before I write the first word. I see them. So look at Hebrews 11. Have fun studying that chapter. Read and study heroes of the faith who have passed on. This is where biographies and even autobiographies or people who are still alive, how did they operate in faith? What can we learn from those examples? And that's point number 3, emulate the heroes of faith who are living. And there are. Too often we build our memorials after people are gone. And then we study their lives. Study them now. You can still ask them questions. You can still learn from their example. And finally, what practical examples can you give that prove you are living by faith? This is back to the same question we asked in the last session. What's your fruit? So now I'm asking you, where's your faith? Show me. Show me where it is. Show me where you are trusting the Lord for something that if He does not come through, you will look foolish. Where's your faith?